Okay, so this one's going to be a weird one. And this one, I'm just going to talk about some fundamental ideas of the self and where it comes from. So, when we look at our ancestors, when we look at what prehistoric people did, they basically were trying to figure out the problem of suffering. Okay, so life is this strange way where life is constantly eating itself. What is that? Well, tribal people, right, in prehistory, they figured out very early on that they have to kill to survive. And in order for them to kill, they kind of understood that, well, I even though I'm killing something, I understand I'm taking away from everything else. So I'm killing and eating, but because I want to continue to live, I have to continue to kill and eat. But in order for me to kill and eat, there has to be animals that exist, and these animals have to continue to exist. So if I kill all the animals, then I also kill myself. So what they did is they worshipped the animals, right? You have those, you have like Lascaux, and you have all the caves, and there are pictures of animals, and all ancient cultures, hell, even up to the modern day, they still revere the animals. And so for them, the animal comes as a willing sacrifice, and it comes as a willing sacrifice to be eaten because the people understand that if the animal is coming to me as a willing sacrifice, I get to continue to eat. So there's something divine in that because the death of something else continues to give me life. This is, of course, true for everything. So even right now, as you're sitting here, your stomach, there are microbacteria in your stomach, in your gut, that are consuming and repurposing, reutilizing the food that you've eaten today. Life, therefore, lives on life. This is one of the harsh mysteries that we have always been trying to come to terms with. Okay? The idea that killing creates more life. So, paradoxical as that is just the way that things are. And so, tribal people had to come up with a solution to understand this. So, they had to view things from a divine religious perspective. They had to go, cool, all right, well, if that's the way that things are, how can we explain that? How can we explain that all life is just this suffering? It's just life eating itself. Well, so what they did is they would come up with various religions and various attitudes. And these attitudes that they had towards this great mystery of suffering, this horrific thing that is existence, that's constantly eating itself, right? They came up with, say, three fundamental attitudes that they could have towards life. The first is they denied this. So they said, this is terrible, this is not the way that things should be. And this is kind of like where vegetarianism stems from, because you're saying, well, life as it is not how it should be, right? So let's deny this. And you have Jainism with this, and these people would try to move as little as possible because every time you move, you're crushing some microscopic organism. And they took this idea very physically. So they thought that, well, just eat as little as possible, drink as little as possible, harm as little things to the point where you are so freed from this that you die. And of course, that's absurd. But even in the modern day, you have people like, well, you have like vegans and vegetarians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, who, from like the moral perspective, not the health perspective, that's a whole other thing, said that the life as it is this way should not be this way. And that is one attitude to take. So you see the way that things are and you say, this is not the way it should be. Another view is the good and evil dichotomy. So you've taken an idea of how life should be, and then what you're doing is you are trying to correct the path to the ideal way in which it should be. Right? So you have this grand idea for society, and we are on the side of good, putting ourselves against the evil. And as we put ourselves against evil, what happens is that we know exactly the way it should be, so we are going to create it in this way that we think or that we know it should be. So this idea comes from Zoroastrianism. And so Zoroaster, he was the prophet, and so you had Ahriman, who was evil and black and all the terrible things, and you had Ahura Mazda, who was good and bright and light and perfect, and Ahriman taints the creation of Ahura Mazda, and so it is up to the prophets of the disciple to lean towards the side of good, vanquish evil completely, right? Or be on the side of light and vanquish darkness completely, which is absurd because you need both light and shadow for things to exist. And then by way of correcting all of these things, you have set right the world, and the world becomes a better place. This, of course, should remind you of something, right? It should remind you of Christianity. It should remind you of Judaism. It should remind you of Islam, because they all share where this comes from. They're all just copying the idea, but rebranding it as it were a thing. Third, you have the complete affirmation of everything. And so this is Hinduism and Buddhism. And Hinduism and Buddhism, or Buddhism, so to speak, is just a way of viewing things. Don't view it as a religion, because there's really nothing to worship, because everything that exists, according to these views, is perfect and exactly the way it should be. This moment, as it is, there's no better moment. This moment, as you're experiencing it, is exactly where you are and where you have to be. And this viewpoint of life is all affirming, meaning that you say yes to everything. You say yes to war, you say yes to disease, hunger, violence, anger, because all of these things are exactly what you are too, right? You're not just good and you're not just bad, you are a mixture. You are a mixture of both, and no matter how hard you try to get away from that, that will always be the case. These life-affirming religions, if you want to call them, are, in their very essence, not really understood more. But fundamentally, they are the ones that you have to take, or that you should take. The reason that you should take them is because it allows you to progress. It allows you to move forward. It allows you to see the actual beauty in the world and the sublimity, and be okay with the way that things are. And instead of trying to change the outside world, the idea is to change your inside world, because once you change your mental state, right, your mindset, then of course the outside world changes with you. Hinduism and Buddhism, they come from this same source of ideas. The gods are everywhere. They are in all things. Everything, all things are Buddha things, as it is said. And all things are therefore exactly as they should be. I think it's one of the passages from like the Dead Sea Scrolls, or one of these like passages in the Bible that didn't make it, but you have the phrase, "The kingdom of heaven is on earth and men do not see it." The idea of enlightenment is to see it, and to see it is completely available to you. It is open, and it is one of the things that we will be discussing.